Yeah, let's do that. Because Jen does have to get back to her eWeb meeting. So thank you for being here, Jen. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to come back and talk with you all about this really important project or topic. I'm going to try to share my screen and just bear with me while usually I have to do a little bit of clicking around to get it just right, but let me give it a try here. So I'm hoping once I do some clicking that you will, do you see a full screen slide deck?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me go back to the beginning. I don't know why I am starting there. Okay, so you see preparing for emergency and water outages.
Yes.
Okay, great. So just a little bit about myself before I dive in, so you know who's talking to you tonight. I work in communications at eWeb, communications and public affairs. I've been with the utility for almost 24 years. I started doing emergency preparedness communications maybe 5 years or so ago, when I first read the article in the New Yorker about the big one. And, you know, I moved to Eugene in like 97, 98. I did not know I was moving to earthquake country until I read that article. And it really, it shook me, pun not intended, but I realized that I was not prepared for a large scale disaster. And I got really motivated to make an emergency kit and a family communication plan and do all the things that I needed to do to prepare my home and take care of my family if something catastrophic were to happen. And I had a lot of starts and stops in that process. I would get very motivated. I would do some research. I'd make lists and then kind of get overwhelmed and take a step back and, asking questions like, where am I going to store all this water? How much is this going to cost? Am I going to end up throwing out all of this food? Kind of got overwhelmed and would start, stop. And so as I kind of went through that journey, it occurred to me that probably other people in our community have similar challenges getting a 3-day or a 2-week emergency kit and plan together. So I started kind of diving in and doing emergency preparedness communications on behalf of the utility. A couple of years ago, I launched a program called the Pledge to Prepare, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation if you haven't heard of it. And if that's just another way that eWeb is trying to educate our customers and provide assistance to help people prepare, whether it is for a winter storm that knocks out power for a couple days, or a really catastrophic disaster like an earthquake that could take out power and water for weeks or months. So I like to start off with this concept of together we prepare, because it really does take everyone working together to create a truly resilient community. And that foundational level is the individual. So that's all of us taking care of our homes, preparing our families, making our emergency kits. That's kind of where it all has to start. And then from there, we talk about the neighborhood level, and I appreciate so much these neighborhood associations and CERT, all of you doing the things that you do to get the word out and pull people together and support each other. That neighborhood level preparedness is so critical. And then kind of at the top of the pyramid is that government assistance that we all will rely on to come in and provide services to our community in a disaster. So whether that be, FEMA or state agencies, or even like nonprofits like Red Cross, those services will be there too, but we can't rely on that, right? We have to also take care of ourselves and take care of our neighbors. And when I think about what is preparedness really, it's about getting to being as self-sufficient as we can be. And if that's just a few days in the beginning, like just starting off with having enough to be self-sufficient for 3 days, that's great. That's a good start. Once you get to that level, building on that and becoming self-sufficient for 3 weeks or even a few months, that's where it really becomes impactful for ourselves and for our community. So a theme of this presentation and a theme of like all of the advice that I give on emergency preparedness is start small, but start now. Don't try to get 3 months prepared this weekend. You know, it's overwhelming. You probably won't be successful. But if every time you go to the grocery store, you pick up an extra few, you know, cans of canned food or extra jugs of water, or you just kind of have a checklist and you check off a little bit at a time, every step that you take, you're that much more prepared. And this is important because we do live in earthquake country. And in 2013, the state of Oregon did a resiliency plan, and they studied in the valley and on the coast, how long might critical services be out in you know, a major event like a 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. I highlighted for us here in the valley, electricity and water could be out for anywhere from a few months to drinking water and sewer could take a full year to get all of the pipes and all of the systems fully repaired and restored. These can be scary images, and I share them not to be alarmist because these are extreme examples, but I do want folks to recognize that something like that, like a home kind of completely collapsing, is a potential. Something like the picture on the right, this is folks in line to receive services after Hurricane Katrina, is possible. And if you look at that line, you know, it extends all the way down till you can't see it anymore. And this is why self-sufficiency becomes so important, because yes, FEMA, the state, the Red Cross will come in, they will provide assistance. But if you're able to be self-sufficient for a few days, a few weeks, for a few months, you're not going to be standing in a line like that, waiting for that assistance. So that's kind of the power of self-sufficiency. So start small, start today. Again, you just kind of hit on those points. Every little step is one step closer to being 2 weeks prepared or 3 weeks prepared, whatever your ultimate goal is. And I'll start off with water. So the official recommendation is that you store at least 14 gallons of water for every person in your household. That's enough water for about 2 weeks, a gallon per person per day. And that's for drinking and cooking and some basic sanitation like brushing teeth. That doesn't include like washing dishes and things like that. It's just the minimum. And there's lots of ways to store water. You know, you can go out and buy like the 5-gallon pre-filled water containers and store those. You can buy empty containers and fill them from your tap. Both are good options, you know, just it's different for everyone, which one is the better choice for you. There are lots of different shapes and sizes of water storage containers, everything from like reusing liter soda bottles to those like 55 or 85 gallon drums that you might store outside of your house. I like to remind folks to think about fuel and power. You'll want to be able to boil water, heat food, power emergency devices. So think about things like storing some extra propane or, you know, camp stove fuel. For some people, investing in a generator is a good option, or even kind of making your own solar powered batteries. There's lots of information online on how to do that pretty affordably. Sanitation is really important, as I've kind of commonly refer to as where are you going to poop? Because if you know if the wastewater lines are broken and we're not able to flush toilets, sanitation is going to become an issue very quickly. So having some ways to be self-sufficient in your home sanitation is very important. Sorry, I might actually have to get a drink of water. I can feel a choke coming on. I'm going to pause for a second.
And while Jen grabs that drink of water, if we could have everybody put their name in the chat too, that you showed up tonight, that would be awesome.
Woo. Sorry about that. I think I'm back. I'm going to try not to choke on you. Know how to shut off your power and water to your home. This diagram is available on the eWeb website, and it shows how to locate the hand valve on your side of the meter. If you don't have one, we can provide a rebate to get one installed, and that information is on our website. We also have a video on how to safely turn off the power at your breaker. So I recommend that you dig into that information and figure that out if you don't already know how to do that. And then just think about other things like tarps, shovels, hardware, first aid, special folks in your house who have special needs. Create a family emergency plan. So make sure that you have talked with your family about how you would communicate if there was a disaster and you weren't together. How, have an agreement that you would try to text each other, or have an outside of the area contact, or have a agreed upon meeting place. Those are all important parts of a family emergency plan. And if you get online to sites like the Red Cross or FEMA, they have templates that you can just sit down with your family and kind of talk about, like, this is where we would meet. They have, templates where you can put down contact information. So lots of resources available online to help create a family emergency plan. Think about your important documents that you might want to take with you if you had to evacuate your home in an emergency. So copies of insurance plans, identification, store extra cash. That's an important part of an emergency kit in case, you can't access ATM machines. It's important to have some cash. I'm sorry.
It's no worries at all, Jen. Part of the human experience, right?
I don't know why my throat is like so dry. We talked about the neighborhood level, connecting with your neighbors, asking if there are folks on your street who are vulnerable, like kids who are home alone in the afternoons who might need to be checked on. That's a really important part, and great value of neighborhood associations. Wow, I'm just falling apart here. I'll take a couple minutes if I can get it out to talk about eWeb's resiliency priorities. So, we are very focused on things like just basic winter storm response. We learned a lot from the 2016 ice storm, the 2018 snowstorm. Seems like every 2 years there's another big event. And we're continually working on improving our response to those events. We're also putting a lot of money in the budget in the coming years to replace and reinforce aging infrastructure. So a lot of the water and electric infrastructure here in Eugene was installed decades ago, right? Like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And a lot of it is reaching end of life, and it needs investment. So we're doing things like replacing pipes, replacing poles, building in redundant sources. And that's number 3 is redundant power and water sources. So a couple more like slides on some details on those resiliency priorities. On the electric side, we are planning to rebuild some substations in the coming years for increased capacity and resiliency. Many of you know, because we've been working on it for years, that we're upgrading and relicensing our local hydro generation project on the Epworth Mackenzie, replacing a lot of the older electrical poles, cross arms and wires, and in some areas, particularly like in the South Hills, converting some of the overhead lines to underground. We are just kind of embarking on a wildfire safety and prevention program. We've always done vegetation management, and we trim about 300 line miles of trees near power lines every year. But as we all saw in 2020, Oregon is has to think about wildfire more and more every year. So we are looking to harden our grid, and that's by doing things like installing more fire resistant ductile iron for poles, and replacing older poles, older wooden poles with this fire resistant material. Power line protective measures really just refers to increasing the sensitivity on the power line so that in wildfire conditions, like when it's really hot and dry and windy for long periods of time, power line protective measures will cause the power lines to trip off more quickly and more easily than they normally would to avoid sparking wildfire. So you're going to be hearing more and more about EWEB and our wildfire safety and prevention measures in the coming years. On the water side, we've always, for decades had a very robust drinking water source protection program in the Mackenzie River. And what we've started working on in the last few years is fortifying critical infrastructure, which is like rebuilding pump stations, rebuilding water reservoirs, increasing the seismic resiliency of the Hayden Bridge filtration plant. We are also just starting the early planning work for a second water treatment plant on the Willamette River. Right now, EWEB, or the community of Eugene, I guess I should say, is the only city that, we're the, out of the 20 largest cities in the Pacific Northwest, we're the only one with a single source of drinking water. And that's a risk. So we're looking at how can we create a second water source on the Willamette River. We also have been working on building emergency water distribution sites, and we currently have 5 sites operational throughout the community. This map here, the blue circles with the water drops are operational sites. The orange circles are sites that are under construction. So we'll have a total of 7 once those 2 sites are finalized. This map is available on our website, and I encourage you to check it out and locate the station that's closest to you. Have a plan for how you would get there in an emergency and how you would transport water back to your house. And then this is the Pledge to Prepare that I mentioned. And basically this is a program that helps our customers and others who sign up for it to go from 0, like I have done nothing to get prepared, to by the end of the year, I have a 2-week kit and a plan, and I'm ready to be self-sufficient for 2 weeks. And it breaks those steps down into just like a handful, 3 or 4 tasks each month. And when you sign up for the program, you get an email each month that tells you, here are the steps to do this month. And then each email includes a PDF that you can download that goes into a lot more detail. So for example, the one on storing water talks about how to disinfect water and gives more information for each task. So that's it. That's our website, eweb.org/emergency-prep. So all of the information that I covered tonight is there and more. There's checklists that you can download. There's videos that you can watch, and you can sign up for the Pledge to Prepare on that website as well. So I'm going to stop talking, give my throat a break, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I have a quick question. I signed up for the Pledge to Prepare like 2 years ago, and I didn't do anything, I have to admit. Can I sign up again?
Yes.
I'm more motivated now.
You can. I mean, the pledge to prepare is one where I mean, you can dive in anytime. You can start mid-year and, just pick up and go, go around the horn. So you might start in the middle and then finish up at the beginning, but yes, you definitely can do that.
Oh, good. Because I definitely, I was excited about it, but I just didn't do it.
It happens to a lot of people. Like I said, starts and stops.
I got a question. I saw in your presentation, it looked like 5 or 6 propane tanks piled up kind of.
Mhm.
Do you have any thoughts on a way to store propane tanks like more outdoors and rather than indoors? And
Yeah. And we do have information on that in the pledge to prepare. And what I have been told and read is that you want to store your propane in a separate building away from the house, like a shed is an ideal place, something that's not connected to the main structure, someplace that is relatively stable temperature and dry. And one of the cool hacks that I heard one time is just to always have 2 propane tanks for your grill. So you've got the one that's attached to your grill and a full one. And when the grill one runs out, you swap in the full one and then replace it. So you always have 1 tank attached to the grill and 1 full one in backup. So, yeah. Does that help?
yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In one of your slides, the house was absolutely crunched to the ground, and you were saying that you need to be prepared. But how do you get prepared in your house if your house is crunched to the ground? I mean, if all your stuff is also crunched to the ground,
right? And so like that is such a good question. And it's one of the reasons why I think for me personally, I had so many starts and stops with preparedness, because I would, see things like that and think, well, what's the point, but there are things that all of us can do to figure out how resilient is our house right now. So you can have like foundation experts come in and masonry experts to look at your chimneys and give you some advice. There are things that you can do to kind of fortify your foundation, like strapping your house to the foundation. Those are kind of higher level, more expensive investments, but they, are definitely worth looking into. Another tip is to have redundancy in where you store your emergency supplies. So having supplies in the house, in the garage, in the shed, in your car, having at least a basic stash of food, water, cash, things like that in different places, so that, if a tree comes down on the shed and demolishes it and all your supplies are in the shed, that's not great, but having that redundant storage strategy can be helpful.
Hey, Jen, speaking of redundant, you said UWeb is looking at redundant power and water supplies, and you gave us a couple of examples. But my question is, how resilient is UWeb going to be in the case of a major earthquake? Will you be able to operate something like that?
It's kind of an unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that I've read about a major earthquake are, would be the worst at the coast, and kind of the impact of it would lessen the further east that you go. But we in the valley are certainly kind of on that edge where if it was a severe earthquake, it could be pretty impactful to our infrastructure. So yeah, we might be looking at things like broken pipes and down lines and things that can't necessarily be very quickly repaired, right? Because we would also be reliant on replacement equipment to be brought in from outside of the community. And when you think about roads and bridges and everybody needing the same equipment, in a really, really bad catastrophic type earthquake, we're looking at serious damage that could take a long time to repair. Now, there are things that we can do. And like I said, upgrading the infrastructure, replacing pipes with more earthquake resistant pipes, and having emergency water stations where people can get provisional water, looking at ways that we might be able to isolate our community from the grid, so that we can, if things are really bad north of us, that we might be able to switch and reroute power to our area. But those are all like big, complicated projects and major investments. It takes time, it takes money. And I just keep going back to, that's the importance of that individual preparedness.
Oh, I agree. I just was wondering if you guys have done any studies. So they're saying it could be a 7 earthquake over here, be around a 7 point on the Richter scale. So has EWEB done any studies to say, okay, well, this is what will happen to our main stations and stuff like that? Or has there, I mean, it's like you say, it's very difficult to figure out, but I just was wondering if there's anything that says, if we have 7 or less, we'll be able to, this equipment would survive or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I could look into that. I'm not sure if we've done that level of study. I know that we participated in the Oregon Resiliency Plan. So that slide that I showed that showed, what the repair times would be. I mean, that's based on EWEB information that we provided to the state along with other utilities. I will say that a lot of the infrastructure investments that we're making, so for example, the new reservoirs that we're building in the South Hills, the new water treatment plant that we're in early stages of designing on the Willamette River, those are all being designed and built to modern seismic standards. So to the degree that we can kind of phase out this aging infrastructure with new modern state-of-the-art infrastructure, the better off we'll all be. But again, big investments, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
I see
Does
Tim's hand.
this is Tim. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just telling her that your hand's up.
No, Tim.
Oh, thanks. This is Tim Felker from Saco in Santa Clara, and I was wondering if EWEB has the ability currently to distribute water in an emergency capacity, and what type of tank trucks and setup they have available right now if this happened tomorrow.
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces to that provisional or emergency water strategy. One is the distribution stations that you saw the map, right? And so those are wells with backup power, like solar and diesel generators as backup power. So that piece of the strategy involves neighbors coming to the station with jugs, filling up from the well and taking the water home. In addition to that, we have some mobile water distribution and treatment trailers. So the treatment trailer, I think we have, I want to say we have 2 of them. They can actually be brought to a water source, a surface water source like the river. And then, basically you throw a big hose in, suck the water out of the river, and it's 7 o'clock. Sorry, the trailer will treat the water and it can be distributed to neighbors from the trailers, and that can be moved around to different intake and distribution points. And then the third piece of that strategy is basically dump trucks that have giant bladders, so that those could be filled up at river and other surface water locations and trucked around town. So that's the emergency way that we would distribute water if we couldn't pump it, clean it, and distribute it through the distribution system infrastructure.
And does eWeb have a plan to run a test scenario to see how this stuff will work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. Every time we have opened up one of those emergency distribution sites, that has been a test. So we've invited community members to come and kind of run through, it's not just a grand opening, it's a practice event. So we've done, I don't think we got to do the last one at the fairgrounds because it opened during COVID, but we've done multiple kind of dry, wet runs, I guess, not dry runs, wet runs of those stations. And we'll continue to do more of those. We advertise those widely. Again, it's been a couple of years because of COVID. We haven't done them, but that counts. That's one way that we're doing it. And then also we've had the opportunity to send these trailers to other communities. So most recently, if you heard about the crisis that they had in Mapleton with their water treatment facility, they basically couldn't provide water for a few days, and eWeb sent one of those distribution trucks there. And so we were able to deploy it and run through the drill in kind of live scenarios in other communities. We also did that in Salem back in, I think it was 2018, when they had their harmful algal bloom issue that impacted their water quality.
Great, thanks, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
That's great to know. I have a quick question about, I totally just lost my question of what it was. My question was power outages with the winter weather coming up. What is the best way if somebody does find themselves with their power out? What are the next steps that they're supposed to do? Who do they contact first?
That's a great question. So the first thing you'll want to do is report your outage. And you can do that by calling the number on our website or texting the number on our website. So, if you don't, it might be, and this is something that is part of kind of your emergency kit as well, is write down important numbers that you might not be able to access online if you don't have power. So write those numbers down, call, report your outage. If you have access, like on a mobile device, to our website, you'll be able to look at an outage map that will show you that, an outage is reported for your area. Like you'll see like a polygon over your area of the map showing that it's reported. And then there'll be status updates, like a crew is aware, a troubleshooter is working, a crew is repairing the outage. So you'll be able to follow the status. I want to caveat all that by saying, in a major outage like the 2016 ice storm, the outage map kind of falls apart. And I'm just going to be honest with you, because it does rely on humans to input data. Like, this is where the crew is working right now. This is where they're going next. And when, like in 2016, when 20,000 people were out across Eugene, we just couldn't keep up with the updates that needed to happen to be reflected. So in those cases, really, I mean, honestly, it's kind of a sit and wait. Once you've reported it, patience, trusting that eWeb knows about it, that we're going to come out there and fix it, that crews are working long hours, trying to get power restored as quickly and safely as possible. And, you can always call the customer service line if you're really kind of like, I haven't heard anything in a long time. Can I get an update? What's going on? And we'll do our best to provide that information.
Thank you.
I think I just saw a chat pop up that someone's followed us on Twitter and found those updates helpful. So in a major storm, we will post updates on our social media channels as well. Thanks for bringing that up.
Kate has her hand, and then I'll put up my hand.
I have a question about whether EPUD and eWeb are working together around emergency preparedness, because some of us in Santa Clara, our power source is EPUD, not eWeb. And I'm wondering how all that's going to shake out were something catastrophic to happen.
I don't know. I don't know if our systems, I'm not sure. That's a really good question. I know on the water side, we have interties with Sub and with Rainbow Water District. But I don't know if the same is true for the electric system. I haven't heard anything like that we would be able to like reroute power to another utilities lines or substations. So I'm thinking no, but I'm going to check and I'll get back to you.
Okay, I was in a 7.1 earthquake down in Santa Cruz, and I just wanted to mention that that our homes weren't all that damaged. We had cracks and the fireplaces fell down, but the roads were the big problem. And I know we have a whole lot of bridges around here, so we could be stranded. And has anyone thought about that in terms of getting help to us?
I mean, as far as the utility goes, we do like overstock a lot of our supplies so that we have some extra. But we can't stock enough to like repair the whole system, right? So being able to get supplies, pipes, wires, poles, gasoline to run the trucks, you know, in a major disaster is going to be an issue. And that's where I think, you know, we're really going to have to rely on federal aid, like, you know, coming in and rebuilding bridges or making emergency bridges or helicoptering in supplies, things like that, because it's a real problem.
Yeah, there were a lot of helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
I got some news on that. See, this in the resilience plan, there was a lot of earthquake damage to bridges and roads was kind of a major topic, and so this legislature passed a bill to prioritize lifeline roads, which would be like I-5 between Eugene and Portland, so there is a plan to repair the bridges and the roads that would be most necessary to, you know, kind of rescue us down here in the Willamette Valley. And there's also a plan to build a gravel road from Redmond to Eugene, you know, through the Cascades. Redmond will be an operational airport after an earthquake, and so that may be the closest way to get supplies to Eugene after an earthquake, and then supply, you know, all that kind of stuff. It really needs to go ground based, and you know, just that trucks are really good for carrying supplies, and when you get into airplanes and especially helicopters are fantastically expensive to use for anything, and when you talk about bringing you know, fuel, propane for a city, you know, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. But that's the earthquake's the worst case. But all these other things, the roads and bridges will probably be okay, unless there's some kind of flood or something.
I really appreciate you saying that, Ed. Because again, I think that's one of the obstacles. You know, people think about the worst case scenario and like, well, what about this and what about that? And you know, it kind of prevents us from preparing for the more likely kind of everyday emergency, like, you know, a major winter storm. If your power is out for 3 days or you know, a week or so, that's a big deal. And there's a lot that we can do to just make that a little bit easier for ourselves. If there's a disruption, you know, on the river, like a tanker spills, chemical or oil or something into the river and we can't distribute drinking water even for a couple of days, that's a big deal. Those are all much more likely scenarios that, just having a few days or a couple of weeks of supplies on hand will be really helpful for. And then, once you've got the basics, I'm prepared for a winter storm, I'm prepared for some kind of emergency that could take out water and public services for a few days or a week, then you can start thinking about, well, what do I do with the foundation of my house? And, all of those really big plans.
As to Lynn's comment about bridges, I heard, but I can't verify, that maybe Oregon Department of Transportation or the Army National Guard has some sort of temporary bridge, barge bridge that they could put across the Willamette for emergencies.
Anne's had her hand up for a really long time.
Oh, thank you. I was curious about the Willamette River as far as drinking water goes. That you said that you're constructing a water treatment site. At this point, if there were an earthquake tomorrow night, would we be able to go over to the Willamette River and take containers of water out of that and put bleach to them? Is that water considered somewhat safe at this point for drinking?
I mean, you would definitely want to treat it / disinfect it. And the bleach is one way, boiling is another way. There are, portable filters, disinfection tablets that you can use for backpacking. Those are all valid ways to make water safe for drinking. That's something that you can find more information on our website, because we actually have links to the CDC on what they recommend to purify water and what are considered safe drinking water sources out in the environment and in your home. But you bring up a good point too about bleach. Bleach is something that you want to have in your household emergency kit, and a lot of people don't think about that. And also that you need to refresh your bleach in your emergency kit once or twice a year, because it doesn't last forever. It basically turns into salt water over time. So don't just throw a little thing of bleach in your emergency kit and forget about it for a couple of years, because it won't work as a water treatment tool.
Thank you.
But let me just say the Willamette and most of the local waterways in McKenzie are pretty good. They're for they don't have a lot of they don't have chemical contamination like you see some places in Eastern Oregon and in agriculture areas. It's really pretty good water, except just the bacteria and the various germs and stuff that may be in there.
That's absolutely right. In fact, we've done testing at the intake site where we will be drawing water in from the Willamette from like 2013 to 2017, the last time we were looking at building a plant on the Willamette, and the water testing, the water sampling was very similar to the water at our intake on the McKenzie. I mean, the McKenzie is the best, right? I don't think anybody will dispute that. It's the highest bar, I think, that you can set for a drinking water source, but we are really fortunate here in the Northwest to have such wonderful rivers and wonderful drinking water sources. And there are literally billions of people in the world who would love to have the Willamette River as a drinking water source.
Yeah.
Just a comment from the Southern Pacific Railroad. There's kind of an underground plume of chemicals headed south, and that does probably get into the Willamette River eventually.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues, there's upstream of where our intake is on the Coast Fork, there are, wastewater plants. It's not a pristine source. But a couple of things I would say about that. Well, I mean, I've already said it's still a good water source compared to most drinking water in the world. Two is this new plant will be built to state-of-the-art technology and will be able to treat for anything the Willamette can throw at us. And three, we will be looking at ways that we can build on the source water protection work that we've been doing EWEB in the Mackenzie for decades now, to do similar work in the Willamette. I mean, the Mackenzie has risks as well, right? There's agriculture, there's hazardous materials transportation, there's forestry. All of this is happening in our watershed now and has the potential to degrade that water source. But EWEB has been very active in that watershed, working with community, working with landowners for decades. And honestly, a big part of what has kept the Mackenzie so pristine, despite all of those risks. And we have an opportunity to look at how we can mirror some of those programs in the Willamette as well. I'd be happy to answer more questions via email. If, Lynn, if you collect some more questions that you want to shoot my way, I'd be happy to do that. And I'll also send you a response to the question about EWEB and EPUD or other utilities kind of sharing power infrastructure. Yeah, I should probably jump, but I will get back to you on that question and send me any others via email, and I'll do my best to respond.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
It's a great presentation.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
night.
Night.
Bye-bye. Okay, are there any more questions? If you have them, stick them in the chat and I'll save the chat and send them to her.
I just was wondering if we could get her, I'll put it in the chat, but get her slide deck. Just to have those, some of
that's a
that
good idea.
information that was in there.
I'm sure she'd be willing to share that. I think she shared the last one with us when she was here earlier in the year too. So we'll get that out to the group.
Thank you.
All right, any other thoughts or questions that people have as we go into the winter season that is upon us?
I had another thought. I don't know if it's still up there, but on OPB, there was a pretty amazing show called Unprepared. And I was very inspired by watching it. It was a couple of years back, same time as that New York Times article. Just kind of gives you just an idea of what maybe to prepare for. So if it's still on the site, then that might be worthwhile for someone.
Yeah, thanks for that recommendation.
It's still up. It's still on there.
Thank you.
This
All
also
right.
always makes me feel hopeless, thinking about all this stuff.
Ed, we're supposed to be hopeful now.
Well, a good night's sleep makes me more hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that Kate posted a question in the chat, curious about the plan for human waste if there's a months-long outage of sewage service. And that's a really good question and probably something we should all be looking at. I know there's information on the website about the bucket system that you can use in your own home and how to set that up for your own waste. But thinking outside of our own homes of what are our neighbors going to be doing, they might not have that bucket system. So there could be things piling up around us that we might have to address as well. So having cleanup materials for things like that could be important.
A lot of buckets to distribute.
But this seems like something that's bigger than an individual. There are a lot of, my hunch is that there are a lot of individuals who, although they would call themselves responsible, don't want to be responsible for that part of their daily needs. And then how do, there has to be a bigger plan than everybody take care of it yourself, because that's gonna, that's you can see people walking around with buckets at night to, you know, leave their bucket someplace else is sort of how that would play out. So there has to be something more well thought out. I would assume it's probably happened somewhere else. So there must be ideas. And that might be something to look at.
Well, you know, there's always the hole in the backyard method.
The freeze.
You know,
Well, I have an outhouse. It doesn't bother me, but I'm just worried about other people. You know, like when you talk about the other 20,500 residents in Santa Clara, I think, oh yeah, not everybody there is going to be down for a bucket system in their own yard.
Yeah.
yeah, that's an
Good point.
interesting idea to try to organize that at a citywide scale. That's definitely something to think about. If we can come up with an idea, that would be handy, I think, because it's
And that
definitely
question
going to
would be
happen.
good- Yeah, that question would be good to pass on to Jen at eWeb too, see if they have more plans past that bucket system of, maybe they have that in their emergency plan. I would hope so. It seems like they have a lot of good ideas. So it'd be good to know what that is.
Just as a comment, I think that's a really good topic for kind of the public-private cooperation that we're trying to do with organizations like eWeb that can have all the plans in the world, but implementation on the local individual level is very hard to get organization around, which is where folks like us who are either with neighborhood organizations or with CERT, who are doing things like getting to know our neighbors and mapping our neighborhood, can be points of dissemination for information that absolutely nobody else wants to know right now. But if the sewer line is actually going to be broken for a week, people are going to be clamoring for that information. It's going to be very easy to hand out.
Good point.
They sort of need it beforehand, though.
Not if they have a yard. That really only takes a shovel.
That's true. You just have some extra bags of lime.
And not even that. I mean, composting can be done with any source of nitrogen and any source of carbon, and that's part of what we're doing here.
I guess leaves would work, wouldn't they?
That's right. But for folks who don't have, I mean, the thing that eWeb I think is probably more focused on are people who live in high density residential places that do not have yards. And that's the folks, you know, at Yapoa and other large multi-residency kind of structures that can't just go down to the backyard. And I think that's beyond the scope of what we have to offer, unless anybody here is an engineering master. But Humanure is a great book.
Humanure?
What's that?
Humanure, it's a great book and one that everybody should have along with their go bag because it's definitely critical information, just like water sterilization techniques.
What is it just about getting rid
It's
of?
about
human waste?
composting human waste. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a whole book. Tim posted it in the chat. That's actually the name of it is Humanure. Yeah, that one too. And if you don't know that yet, you definitely should go read a book about it.
Lots of good info in this chat tonight.
Okay, I didn't know that about hookworms. I have to sign off because I got a 7:30 phone call, but it's very nice to see all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
I
joining.
love your Christmas tree. It's
Yeah.
beautiful in the background.
You know, this is the only spot that I have good Wi-Fi. I didn't even realize it gave you a ringside seat to the holiday.
Beautiful. It's
Holiday
beautiful.
decorations are up.
Christmas spirit.
Win-win. Yeah, we just finished Hanukkah. Christmas is next.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
And P.S. Happy last day of Hanukkah.
Yeah. Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions for the chat?
All right, with our last few minutes, we'll give a plug of our upcoming meetings. So we meet monthly together between Santa Clara, Bethel, and the River Road neighborhood. We meet on the first Tuesday of the month at 6:30 to 7:30. It's always via Zoom, so anybody can join, and we record them each month so that everybody can watch them afterwards. But we invite you all to tell your friends and join us and bring your questions and your ideas so we can keep the conversation going around the neighborhood. So if anybody needs information for that next Zoom meeting, reach out to who invited you tonight. We'll make sure to get you on the list for those details.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Jackie.
Thanks for coming tonight. This was, I think this was our biggest meeting yet, so this is great attendance.
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
All
Awesome,
right.
everybody.
All right,
Have a
guys.
good night.
Take care.
Nice.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Jackie, I have a quick question for you before you leave.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, oh, it's a recording. Do you want to stop the recording?
Oh, yes. Let me stop that.